Hello, I'm Jess, and once again this week I am both the traumatized and the abandoned. If you guys don't know, Nikki, who is usually my co-host, is on maternity leave. She is enjoying so much baby time, and again, baby is so cute. Sending them all the love and positive vibes and just all the good things. Usually during this podcast, we will talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between. So today, we're going to be talking about some conspiracy theories. Now, this one I've been saving for a minute in my back pocket because it's a little beefy. So I figured why not just pull it out. It's October. It's super creepy. We're going to be talking about the Bermuda Triangle and the disappearances that have gone on in this triangle, in this area. It's crazy. First update, it's October. It's starting to be my favorite season is fall, so that's really exciting. Work is gonna start getting busy, but other than that, just pressing on through life. And yeah, hope you guys are doing great. Today's fun fact of the day. Did you know that armadillo shells are actually bulletproof? In fact, one Texas man was hospitalized when he went to shoot an armadillo and it ricocheted off the animal and hit him in the jaw. That doesn't even sound real. Can you imagine going to the ER and being like, oh yeah, I got shot in the jaw because I tried to shoot an armadillo? It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, didn't know, now you do. Yeah, that was super short intro. This is so short. I miss Nikki. We miss her. That's really it for the intro. So I guess we just dive right into it, right? That's it? How does she do these? Anyway, okay, so like I said, we're talking about the Bermuda Triangle. We're going to get right into it. So the Bermuda Triangle is a section of North Atlantic Ocean off North America in which more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes are said to have mysteriously disappeared. They're just gone. Where'd they go? That's insane. 50 ships and 20 airplanes. They have tracking devices on them. How did they just disappear? I don't understand. It's crazy. It's baffling. The area, whose boundaries are not universally agreed upon, has a triangular shape that reaches approximately from the Atlantic coast of Florida, some think around Miami, to Bermuda, to the islands known as the Greater Antilles. Now, reports of unexplained occurrences in the region date to the mid-19th century. Some ships were discovered completely abandoned for no apparent reason. Others transmitted no distress signals and were never seen or heard from again. Where did they go? Cue Nikki. Where did they go? Aircraft have been reported, then vanished, and rescue missions are said to have vanished when flying into the area. So not only are ships and airplanes disappearing, but when people go searching for them in this area, they go missing. That's crazy. When they do survive, so when they send people out to search for them and they come back, they don't find wreckage. Literally just wiped off the face of the earth. I don't understand. Some of the theories advance to explain the repeated mysteries have been fanciful, meaning it's just a bunch of coincidence and people are just putting two and two together. Although theories of supernatural causes for these disappearances are numerous, geophysical and environmental factors are most likely responsible. One hypothesis is that pilots fail to account for the agonic line. Now, this is the place at which there is no need to compensate for a magnetic compass variation. So as they approach this Bermuda Triangle, it results in significant navigational error and catastrophe. But okay, fine, that could happen. But why would it happen 50 times? Wouldn't people notice that and then fix it and realize where they're going? Plus there'd be wreckage. I don't know. Another popular theory is that the missing vessels were felled by so-called rogue waves, which terrify me, by the way. It's one of my not rational fears, are rogue waves and tsunamis. Rogue waves even more so, because the tsunamis you at least get some sort of warning usually. Rogue waves just come out of nowhere for no reason. But basically, if you don't know what they are, they're massive waves that can reach up to heights of 50.5 meters. That's 100 feet. That's a football field length of a wave. And obviously that would theoretically be powerful enough to destroy all evidence of a ship or airplane. Okay. Do airplanes fly that low? 100 feet? No. So why would airplanes be not? I guess if airplanes were crashing and then a rogue wave hit, oh, come on. This just doesn't make any sense. Now, the Bermuda Triangle is located in the area of the Atlantic where storms from multiple directions can converge, obviously making the rogue waves more likely to occur. So the Bermuda Triangle is known as a rough area of sea. Okay, fine. Whatever the case is, the mysterious Bermuda Triangle has claimed many ships and airplanes over the years and years. I'm not gonna sit here and go into all 50 missing boats and 20 missing airplanes. So I figured what I do is I take the top 5 most iconic disappearances and then finally dive into the disappearance of the Carol A. Deering ship. I had talked about disappearing ships a couple episodes ago. It was more than a couple. It was a while ago. I got into like multiple disappearing ships. The Carol A. Deering really stuck out to me and I was going to talk about it then. Then I was like, I saw it had ties to the Bermuda Triangle and I was like, oh no, we're going to save that and we're going to hit it up today. So to start us off, we're going to start with the Ellen Austin. In 1881, the Ellen Austin set off from Liverpool, destined for New York. Carrying passengers immigrating to America, the ship had been at sea for several weeks when the captain took an unplanned shortcut through the Sargasso Sea. Known for its stormy nature, this route led the Ellen Austin through the Bermuda Triangle. Why? I don't care how much time you're going to speed up. I feel like this is the fault of like the Titanic. It's like, oh, we want to be fast and make shortcuts. And shortcuts never work, guys. They just end up getting people killed. Stop it. Take the longer route. It's worth it. Shortly into the detour, the captain sighted another vessel sailing erratically in the distance. How do you sail erratically? It's just like bobbing and weaving, maybe? Bob and weave in a boat. I don't know. The ship appeared abandoned and was moving unpredictably. Convinced it was some sort of a trap, Captain Griffin of the Ellen Austin kept a safe distance for 2 days before ordering a crew to go aboard and investigate why the ship wasn't responding to their hails. Are they just like following the ship now, or is it happening to just be going in the same direction as them? I would assume it would be happening to go in the same direction as them. Because if he has like a whole boat full of immigrants, he's not going to be like, yo, let's just follow this a random boat the wrong way. You know what I mean? I hope. So the unnamed schooner? The unnamed boat was found to be abandoned with an intact cargo. There is no sign of violence and no indication that there had been a reasonable excuse to abandon the ship. Captain Griffin ordered a small selection of his crew to captain the ship, and then they sailed together to New York where it could be salvaged. So that's always super eerie to me when you hear about abandoned ships. All the cargo is intact, meaning it wasn't pirates, right? They weren't there stealing stuff. Then there was no reason to abandon the ship. So like you don't think the crew just got up and left because there's no reason to. So why is there no crew? So then the captain was like, all right, bet we're on the way to New York. We'll split the crew in half. So obviously he had enough crew, split them in half and all sail to New York and then basically bring this ship. Shortly after resuming their journey, a heavy storm separated the two ships. When the storm passed, and Captain Griffin once again sighted the mysterious ship, he pulled alongside and found that once again, it was abandoned with no sign of bloodshed or reasonable damage. So he put half of his crew on this ship. They got separated, found the ship again, and now half of his crew is gone. But there's no sign of like any sort of scuffle, no sign of bloodshed. What? Whether too scared to lose yet more crew or pressed for time and resources, Captain Griffin opted to leave this ship adrift and continue to New York. So after he lost half of his crew, he was like, you know what? Screw this. It's not worth it. It is not worth it. So they made it safely to New York. But what's crazy is that ship and crew, the original crew and the makeshift crew, were never seen again. So what happened to them? I mean, so I get the idea of like rogue waves sweeping the crew off of like a fishing boat maybe, but this wasn't a fishing boat. This was a big boat. So like, where did the crew go? Where did the original crew go? We'll never know. It's crazy. So another of the big disappearances was the USS Cyclops. Now on March 4th, 1918, collier USS Cyclops was set to sail to Baltimore, Maryland. With no scheduled stops along her route, she was due to arrive in port with a full load of magnesium ore on March 13th. So quick 9-day journey. However, the ship never arrived. Just didn't show up. The last transmission ever received from this ship reported that, quote, weather fair all well. And the lack of any wreckage or SOS message has led many to speculate what actually may have caused this ship and her crew to literally vanish somewhere in the 9-day window. To this day, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops and her 305 crew remains the largest recorded loss of life in the U.S. naval history. Imagine being one of the family members of one of the soldiers on that ship. How do you explain that? That's crazy. How does the Navy just explain a ship just completely disappearing and no wreckage was ever found? Wild. And no SOS message either, because, you know, I think even if a rogue wave hits, you would think somebody. And then again, so the whole rogue wave thing just doesn't make sense to me, because you're telling me 305 people just got swept out to sea and nothing? I don't know. Crazy. So the next boat we're going to be talking about is the Witchcraft. Now, the Witchcraft was a 23-foot luxury cruiser that had disappeared on the evening of December 22nd, 1967. The boat's owner had invited his close friends out to the ocean to look at the Christmas lights over the waters of Miami. Remember, Miami is where some speculate the triangle kind of like, that's where one of the points is. The plan was to go off a short distance out to sea, switch off the engine, and enjoy the scenery. How relaxing. Truly, that really does sound relaxing. At 9 p.m. that night, Miami Coast Guards received a distress call that calmly informed them that the boat had hit something in the water and would require a tow less than a mile offshore. What did you hit in the water? Although it is crazy. I was watching a TikTok of all things. I get a lot of my information from TikTok, and I think that's probably not the best thing. But you know what? It's there. But one of the scariest things, because I used to spend a lot of time on my grandfather's boat on the lake, and they were talking about how you could barely see this like log that was like floating up and down, and I think they call it like a dead tree log or something, or it was something very ominous because it's scary because it's very hard to see, but it is literally a waterlogged log, like a tree log that is vertical. So, you know, when they're horizontaling on the water, you can kind of see them. That's easier to see. But when they're vertical, you only get to see like the top of it. And that's hard when all the waves are going and stuff. And if you hit it, you're either getting your hole punched or, gosh forbid, if it gets to your engine and your rudder, ugh. So, you know, they're really dangerous. So maybe that's something like they hit and they realized it was, you know, there was a leak or something. The owner indicated that this wasn't an emergency and that they would fire a flare to let the Coast Guards know of the boat's exact location. Less than 20 minutes later, the Coast Guards reached the point where they believed that the call had been made, but there was no sign of the Witchcraft. There were no flares ever seen. Neither the Witchcraft nor her 2 passengers were ever seen again. Just gone. I'm gonna take a quick second. 2 passengers? Dude, you wanted to invite your close... Oh, it said his close friend. Okay. I thought you said close friends. I was like, oh, he only has 1. That's sad. Okay, I misread that. So that was a close friend. So it was just this one guy and his close friend. How unfortunate. Well, it's crazy. And like I said, I'm only going into a couple of these. There's so many. And it's just, to me, it doesn't seem like it could be a coincidence. So the next one we're going to talk about is Flight 19, the PBM Mariner. This one's crazy, so buckle up. Again, for me, it's the fact that, like, our military, they're just losing people in this Bermuda Triangle. And it's like... we finally agree that there's aliens. Proud of us. We all knew it. But the government's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's aliens. We were like, yeah, nobody was surprised. Literally nobody. We're like, yeah, we know. Okay, so next, can we talk about the Bermuda Triangle? Because you're telling me our military were missing ships and planes in this area and nobody's gonna talk about it? We're just gonna keep sweeping it under the rug? Okay, cool. Ugh. So perhaps one of the most notorious disappearances in the Triangle was the fate of Flight 19 and the PBM Mariner. It has left even the greatest minds searching for answers because, yeah, we can all just say the Bermuda Triangle, just don't go there, right? Just don't. But nobody can actually explain what's going on, which to me is just wild. That's the wild part of this. So when Flight 19 which was a group of 5 Avenger torpedo bombers, took off from Fort Lauderdale on December 5th, 1945. They expected their 3-hour bombing journey to be just as uneventful as the runs they had done countless times before. Shortly after dropping off their payload of replica bombs, so it's just like a training exercise, the patrol began to run into trouble. Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, a very experienced pilot, believed that his compass had started to malfunction and that Flight 19 had been flying in the wrong direction. Now, pause real quick because, as most of you should have, if you haven't already, you need to go watch Nikki's solo around Christmas time, I believe, was about Amelia Earhart, the disappearance of her and how they may or may not have found her. But this also happened in the Bermuda Triangle. So the compass thing is definitely a common occurrence here, at least for flying, right? Taylor, obviously concerned, contacted another Navy flight instructor who was flying close to the Florida coast. With the weather getting increasingly worse, obviously it has to, because that is always what happens when things are bad, they tend to get worse. Taylor went against protocol of pointing a lost plane towards the setting sun. Believing that they were somewhere over the Florida Keys, Taylor adjusted the heading in an attempt to navigate the Gulf of Mexico. Now, sensing Taylor's mistake, some of his men challenged this decision to continue northeast and convinced him to turn tail and head back westward. For reasons unknown, however, he once again turned the flight back around, still concerned that they were somewhere over the Gulf. As the flight flew further away from land, their transmissions became fainter and fainter. Having flown for more than their allotted time, the crew was starting to get concerned that they wouldn't be able to correct their navigation before they ran out of fuel. In the final transmission, Taylor told his men that once the first plane dropped below 10 liters of fuel, they would all ditch together for a greater chance of rescue. A few short minutes later, the transmissions just ended. Certain that the flight had ditched into the ocean, the Navy immediately launched the search and rescue effort. 2 Mariner flight boats were scrambled to search for the missing Flight 19. However, after 20 minutes of taking off, one of the Mariners disappeared off the radar. What? So first 5 planes, because that whole thing doesn't make sense. In the final transmission, they're like, all right, once they drop below 10, we're going to ditch together. Then wouldn't there be other transmissions saying, all right, we're below 10. Okay, we're ditching here. Like, there should have at least been something more than that. Nope, they just ended. They're gone. Where? We don't know. And then you send a search boat in, and then they just, disappear off radar? What? Neither 13 crewmen, 5 pilots of Flight 19, nor the wreckage of any aircraft were ever recovered from this. How? Where? This gives me like Lost vibes. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show. It was one of those shows that was on air. When it was on air, I was very stubborn. I was like, I don't want to be those people and like watch it like with everyone else. So I like waited until I was in college and then very bored one summer and just binged it. But like they literally just disappear. Is it like is there a portal to another dimension there? I mean, how do you explain it? I don't know. It's crazy. This next one is super interesting to me too. This next one is actually the Great Isaac Lighthouse. This is a lighthouse in the Bermuda Triangle. All right. It doesn't move. Unlike the other disappearances, the Great Isaac Lighthouse mystery is unique in that both lighthouse keepers were stationed on land when they vanished. A barren island, the Great Isaac Rock already had a grim history. Local lore told of a ship that wrecked with no survivors except for a single infant. I have so many questions. So did they find the infant and that's how they knew that no one else survived? Because obviously an infant isn't going to be able to take care of itself. You know what I mean? So that must have been what happened. First put into service in the mid-1800s, the lighthouse housed the island's only 2 inhabitants, its keepers. On August 4th, 1969, a small boat was launched to check on the lighthouse. Routine calls had gone unanswered. Upon arrival, the investigators discovered that the island was empty and there were no signs of its 2 guardians. A hurricane had passed over the island shortly before, but the lack of damage to the living quarters raised the questions as to why the 2 very experienced lighthouse keepers wouldn't have stayed put while they were safest. Others believe that the pair were caught in a drug smuggling ring of all things, or perhaps they were kidnapped, but no evidence of foul play was left to suggest anything towards that. And the fate of both keepers to this day remains a mystery. Okay, so let's think about this. So there was a hurricane, right? Now, Now, obviously, experienced keepers would have bunkered down. This one there could be a lot of explanations for because, I mean, things happen. They never found the bodies, but it's also the ocean. They could have been eaten. You know, they get swept off the rock. One goes missing, the other goes looking for them. Like, you know, this one, it's still strange because obviously now it's abandoned completely and it's on land. It's not an actual like disappearance of a boat or plane, but still. Of note, this is not the only time that isolated lighthouse keepers have disappeared in the strangest circumstances. 3 men actually vanished from the Flannan Isles, a small group off the northwestern coast of Scotland in 1900. So that is actually the one I'm more familiar with about how 3 men just vanished because I've heard, my gosh, it was probably on TikTok. I heard it somewhere and I was like, what? And they searched for them, they looked for them everywhere and they just couldn't find any evidence of, they just disappeared. And I'm pretty sure the one in Scotland, there was food still on the table and like drinks and stuff. Like they literally just vanished. Finally, we have gotten to the Carol A. Deering disappearance. Like I said, this has been on my list since I did those other ships back in a couple episodes ago. I've been waiting for this. This is a quote from the Washington Herald from February 3rd, 1921. Like a flying Dutchman, the 5-masted schooner Carol A. Deering loomed through the mists about Diamond Shoals today, all sails set but unmanned. In late January 1921, all occupants of schooner Carol A. Deering disappeared somewhere in the waters along the North Carolina coast. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube, I am sharing a picture of the ship. It's basically, if you think about a typical like galleon, right? It has like multiple masts, big sails, big ship. Kind of put it into your mind. The ship was still in good condition when it was spotted from Cape Hatteras on January 31st, 1921, before it was torn apart on the Diamond Shoals. When the ship was boarded by the Coast Guard, after it ran aground, the sails were set. Food had been prepared but was untouched, and everything seemed in order. But the big question, what happened to the captain and the crew? Where did they go? Food had been prepared but untouched. That to me, that's just wild. It just gives me a feel that like people are just being teleported to somewhere. Does that make me crazy? Am I crazy? What if they're just being taken to another dimension, guys? I think that's my biggest theory here. And I think that makes me a little crazy, but it's okay. We can all be a little crazy. How else do you explain this? How do you explain people just like poof, they're gone, they're disappeared? The ship found abandoned. The guy put half of his crew on the ship and then they found it again abandoned. What? This is so weird. The lifeboats were gone. There was no sign of 12 men who had been aboard heading north from Barbados to Norfolk, Virginia. Were they taken by pirates? Russian spies at the time were a really big theory. Or obviously, was it just the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? Debates ran through the pages of newspapers, and yet to this day, no one knows the true story. So here are some theories of what happened. So on January 29th, the Deering passed by the Cape Lookout lightship. Someone on board shouted across that they had lost both anchors, but otherwise there was no signs of distress. But when the ship was spotted 2 days later by the Coast Guard at Cape Hatteras, the ship was abandoned. Why would a crew of a perfectly good vessel abandon ship? A quote, one of the theories was that there had been trouble among the crew, a fight perhaps, even a mutiny. And yet, wouldn't a mutinous crew take over the ship rather than abandon it? Why would you do a mutiny and then just be like, okay, see ya, bye? A month after the Coast Guard began investigating the Carol A. Deering, a new theory was formed related to the disappearance of another vessel, the Hewitt, around the same time. Now, the Hewitt was making its way from Sabine, Texas to Portland, Maine, carrying a cargo of sulfur when it sent its last message on the 25th of January off the coast of Florida. When the vessel never arrived in Boston, where it was expected on January 29th, a search began. The Hewitt and her crew also disappeared with no trace. The theory, could the two ships have collided? Where that is a possibility. The New York Tribune noted the lack of oars, life preservers, other floating wreckage is instanced as an argument against this theory. 58 men were now lost. That includes both crew of those ships. In April 1921, a message in a bottle found by a man on the North Carolina coast seemed to give the answer to the mystery. The note read, Deering captured by oil burning boat. Dun, dun, dun. The State Department began an investigation into the Deering and several other missing ships, and it was suspected that the Deering had been captured by pirates. Then newspapers began reporting the possibility of a Bolshevik plot to steal the ship's cargo and crews and somehow whisk them away to Russian ports. By September, however, it was discovered that the message found in the bottle, the only real evidence of what may have ever happened to the Deering's crew, was in fact written by the man who supposedly found it. Mr. Christopher Columbus Gray, what a name, faked the note in hopes that he could discredit the staff at the Cape Hatteras lighthouse to take someone's job. So he was literally trying to yoink someone's job. So he faked this letter, be like, nah, they're lying. That's not what happened. So I'm just going to slide in and steal their job. Jesus. Okay. The hoax prompted investigations by the U.S. Navy, Treasury, State Department, and Department of Commerce, and Department of Justice. This dude is in trouble. Without the note, however, the investigation fizzled out and ended without an official explanation. As speculation sailed through the newspapers and government investigations, comparisons were made to other mysterious nautical disappearances. Really? Still within the recent memory for many was the disappearance 3 years earlier of none other than the USS Cyclops, along with all passengers, which again, nearly 300 people had gone missing. That was just 3 years before this happened. The Cyclops had a very similar route to the Deering. Departure from Brazil, a stop in Barbados, and then up the US coast. Could it have been sunk by a German ship as part of the hostilities in the First World War? Again, no evidence was ever found to provide us with answers. What did the Carroll A. Deering, USS Cyclops, and Hewitt all have in common? In addition to obviously all the missing people, they all passed over that mysterious stretch of ocean known as the Bermuda Triangle. Myths about the Bermuda Triangle wouldn't start until some 40 years later, but the ghost ship Carroll A. Deering is still discussed as one of its many mysteries. So, did the crew disappear in a supernatural event over the notorious waters? According to the Coast Guard Captain R.L. Gaskell, he says, there is no mystery at all in the disappearance of the crew of the four-mast schooner Carroll A. Deering. The veteran captain was one of the first to spot the Deering heading into shore on January 31st, 1921, and called the tales of piracy so much newspaper bunk. Gaskell provided a perfectly logical explanation. Faced with the ship stuck on the outer sandbar of the Diamond Shoals, 90-mile-an-hour winds and waves like mountains, the crew had to make a quick decision either to stay on the ship or risk being stranded and try to take the lifeboats to shore. With all the lifeboats gone, Captain Gaskell had no doubt. This is a quote, "In such a sea as this, the crew of the Deering manned their lifeboats and tried to make it to shore 9 miles away, but no lifeboat could have survived those waters." Okay, Captain, what happened to the other 49 ships and 20 airplanes then? I mean, fair. There could be sandbars, for sure. Very treacherous waters. I'm talking about rogue waves. It's crazy to think about all these disappearances. What do you guys think? Would you take a cruise through the Bermuda Triangle? Would you fly through it? Do you guys have any explanations? What are your theories? I'm super eager to know. I think I am out on the limb, kind of paranoid, saying that there's an alternate universe somewhere that these people are all living in now. I have no other explanation, just not a good one. Either that or bad weather, but my gosh, I feel like if it was bad weather, there would be some sort of wreckage. I mean, have we gone like sea diving in the Bermuda Triangle to see if there's like a ship graveyard or something? I don't know. That just seems crazy to me that all of these ships and airplanes have disappeared with no sign of wreckage. Wild. That's it for this episode. If you guys enjoy, please do not forget to follow the podcast, leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Do it. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with our username TTAT Podcast. And in the bio of all of our social medias is our link tree, which has our email. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas, hit us up. Let us know. If you want to send some well wishes to Nikki and her family, do it there. I'll let her know that they're there, and I'm sure she would love to hear from you guys. Thanks for listening. Next week, we are doing Spooky Spectacular spectacular special, Scary Stories by Jess. Yeah, did Nikki help me make that? She did. She did. That was like her parting gift for me, was a bunch of titles that I could choose from. So I appreciate her so much. But yeah, so next week, guys, we are going to turn up the game, do some whisper scary stories. So bring your popcorn, bring your blankets. I'm gonna try to scare you. We'll see if it works. Nikki's not here to laugh at me about Siren Head. So if you guys didn't see that, you should really go back and watch. I think it was two cryptids ago. I was really trying to scare her with Siren Head, and all she did was laugh at me the whole time. So hopefully I'll bring some actual scary stories this week for you guys, because next week's Halloween. Let's go. I love fall. I'm such a fall girl. It's sweater weather. As you can see, I got my hoodie out. I'm ready. I'm so ready. So yeah, be there, be square. And with that, we're going to leave you with this inspirational quote. So this one comes from Mandy Hale. You don't always need a plan. Sometimes you just need to breathe, trust, let go, and see what happens. This resonated with me so much because I'm a planner, and especially when I get stressed or anxious, I need a plan and I need to stick to it. And when things don't go according to plan, it makes me more stressed. This one really resonated with me. Sometimes you just don't need a plan. Sometimes you just need to be in the moment and take a deep breath, trust, and just let go. Hope that helps you guys out this week. Thanks for listening again, guys. Until next time, bye.